VinFuture Prize, a new global science and technology prize for humanity from Vietnam. One VinFuture Grand Prize of $3 million. 3 additional special VinFuture prizes valued at $500,000 each. VinFuture Prize honors science and technology work that creates or has a high potential to create meaningful change in the everyday lives of millions of people. Join us to make a change for a better future.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second and most importantly, the final call for nominations webinar presented by the VinFuture Foundation for the 2023 award season. My name is Tao Chen. I am the communications specialist here at the VinFuture Foundation, and it is my pleasure to be your moderator for today. Today's webinar, just like its name, Call for Nominations, serves as a platform to encourage and facilitate the nomination process for the 2023 award season. It is also an opportunity to learn more about our purpose, our values, what we bring to the sci-tech community, and how much we are committed to creating a fair and transparent selection process. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you our panelists for today. Our chair for the webinar and also the chair of the VinFuture Prize Council, Professor Richard Henry Friend. Our co-chair for the webinar and also a member of the VinFuture Prize Pre-screening Committee, Professor Alta Schutte. And we're so honored to have here with us our special guest for today, Dr. Emmanuel Desurvire, laureate of the 2022 VinFuture Grand Prize. Representing the VinFuture Prize, I'm pleased to present Dr. Thái Hà Lê, Managing Director of the VinFuture Prize. Last but definitely not least, Dr. Luân Phạm, a member of the VinFuture Prize Secretariat, who will provide you all with an insightful presentation on the nomination process. Before we get started, to ensure the best audio quality, please keep in mind that your microphones will be muted and that this webinar will be made available on YouTube for future viewing and reference. Now, without further delay, please join me in welcoming Managing Director Dr. Thái Hà Lê, who will be sharing valuable insights about the VinFuture Foundation. Her presentation promises to be engaging and informative. Now, without further delay, I invite Dr. Thái Hà Lê to the virtual stage.
Thanks, Tao. So a very good day to everyone. My name is Thái Hà and I'm the Managing Director of VinFuture Prize. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to join us here today. It is a pleasure, a great pleasure to have so many distinguished researchers and scholars with us. And I hope that you will find this webinar session informative and helpful to you. Before we begin, I'd like to share some important information about Vietnam, our country, and VinFuture Foundation and the prize. Vietnam is a Southeast Asian country with a population of 99.6 million. We are proud of the positive transformation that have taken place in our country, and we have been recognized as a new tiger economy in Asia. Our people are friendly, hardworking, eager to learn, and our entire country is dynamic. Now let's briefly talk about the 2 founders of VinFuture Foundation, Mr. Phạm Nhật Vượng and his wife, Madame Phạm Thu Hương. Mr. Vượng was born in 1968 and he studied in Russia. In 2020, he was honored as one of the Forbes Heroes of Philanthropy of the Asia-Pacific region for his significant contribution to Vietnam's pandemic relief effort. He once said, "I don't care how much money I make, I want to build things that make life beautiful." The second founder is Mr. Vượng wife, Madame Phạm Thu Hương, who is the standing vice president of Vingroup. As the largest private corporation in Vietnam, Vingroup focuses on 3 core pillars: industry, services, and social philanthropy. We are the pioneers and the largest market players in almost every market we operate in, from real estate, hospitality, education, healthcare to mobility. Founded on December 20, 2020, which is the International Human Solidarity Day, VinFuture Foundation mission is to build a future where breakthrough scientific research and technological innovation can empower people, enhance their life, and create a more equitable and sustainable world for future generations. We are working towards the mission through 4 activities. The first and foremost is the VinFuture Prize, which is the first annual sci-tech global prizes from Vietnam. Even though Vietnam is still a developing country, VinFuture Prize is one of the world's largest annual prizes in science and technology, with one grand prize of $3 million and three special prizes of $500,000 each. We hope that Vietnam will become more visible on the global map of science technologies in the years to come. Next, I'd like to share with you more about the VinFuture Prize Sci-Tech Week event, which consists of a series of events held within a week. Due to the time constraint of this webinar, I will only show you some of the most memorable photos from the 2022 season. The most important events is the VinFuture Prize Award ceremony held on December 20, 2022, where we announced our laureate to the public. This is a photo of the 4 winners of the grand prize. Sir Tim Berners-Lee from the UK, Dr. Vincent from the US, Dr. Emmanuel Desurvire from France, who is also our special guest for this today's webinar, Dr. Robert Kahn from the US, and Professor Sir David Payne from the UK. These laureates make breakthrough invention in global internet connection technology, which have comprehensively changed means of communication and working, and laid a stepping stone for modern social-economic development. The person in the middle of the photo is the chairman of the National Assembly, Mr. Vương Đình Huệ. And here is the winner of the special prize for the female innovators, Professor Pamela Roner from the US. Her groundbreaking work on isolating the sub-1A gene has created a foundation for developing a flat-tolerance rice varieties. The special prize for innovators from developing countries went to Professor Thalpir Pradeep from India. Professor Pradeep invented a low-cost water filtration system that can remove arsenic and heavy metals, providing clean water to millions of residents in areas affected by water pollution. The special prize for innovators with outstanding achievement in emerging fields was awarded to Dr. Demis Hassabis from the UK and Dr. John Jumper from the US. They developed AlphaFold 2, an artificial intelligence system that revolutionized protein structure modeling and advanced breakthroughs in biomedicine, healthcare, and agriculture. Dr. John Jumper arrived in Hanoi, but unfortunately, he was unable to attend the ceremony due to an emergency, so he had to fly back earlier. Apart from the award ceremony, we also organized 4 other events during the Sci-Tech Week. The first event was a conversation with the members of the VinFuture Prize Council and Pre-screening Committee. It was an interactive session where policymakers, social activists, entrepreneurs, leading scientists, researchers, and talented students in Vietnam engaged in discussion with the panelists who share their personal and professional experience, successes, and even failure. We also held an inspirational talk series titled Innovate Today, Create Tomorrow. It brought together experts from various fields to give talk to Vietnamese experts, young scientists, talented students, and startup community. Our Science for Life Symposium was a day-long event that created connection between the Vietnamese sci-tech community and top scientists, policymakers, and entrepreneurs. The symposium had 3 consecutive 90-minute panels, each focusing on critical issues related to a specific theme for the future. Last but not least, we organized an event to connect the laureate to the public. We call it Talk Future, a dialogue with VinFuture Prize 2022 laureate. The dialogue offers a chance for the laureate to share their scientific breakthrough story, inspirations, and aspirations. It was a highly intellectual and inspirational event that will be remembered as a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of our webinar today. We have some more exciting content coming up, Tao, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Taihai. Your presentation was truly insightful and that we appreciate you being here with us today. Well, to award the annual VinFuture Prize to proven breakthrough scientific research and technological innovations, which have high potential to create meaningful change in people's lives, is what we at the VinFuture Foundation aspire to do. And now, before we get to meet Professor Friend, I would like to invite you all to have a look at this short video regarding the 2022 VinFuture Prize Award ceremony. Please take a look.
Once again, science enthusiasts worldwide are captivated by the 2022 VinFuture Award ceremony. The event was held with the utmost solemnity and was graced by the presence of National Assembly Chairman Vuong Ding Hui, as well as esteemed scientists. The VinFuture Prize 2022 extends its heartfelt gratitude to 2,618 esteemed scientists hailing from 71 countries across 6 continents, who have graciously accepted the role of nomination partners for our second award season. Your invaluable contribution has enabled us to identify and acknowledge the most exceptional scientific works that align with our 2022 theme of reshaping and reviving. The VinFuture Special Prize dedicated to female innovators was awarded to Professor Pamela Christine Ronald for her breakthroughs in isolating the sub-1A gene. The VinFuture Special Prize dedicated to innovators from developing countries was awarded to Professor Talapil Pradeep for his development of a low-cost filtration system. The Special Prize for innovators with outstanding achievements in emerging fields was awarded to Dr. Demis Hassabis and Dr. John Jumper for their pioneering work on AlphaFold 2. The Grand Prize, valued at $3 million, was awarded to Professor Sir David Neil Payne, Dr. Emmanuel Desurvire, Dr. Robert Elliott Kahn, Sir Timothy John Berners-Lee, and Dr. Vinton Gray Cerf for their breakthroughs in making global network technology a reality, forever changing the way we live. The VinFuture Season 2 award ceremony was a night of unparalleled artistry, highlighted by a stunning performance from the Grammy Award-winning vocal powerhouse Christina Aguilera. The VinFuture Prize 2022, where the brightest minds of the world come together, where art and science intertwine in a divine fusion, and where we reinstate our mission, science for humanity.
And we are honored to have joining us today Professor Richard Henry Friend, our chair for the webinar, and also the chair of the VinFuture Prize Council, who will shed more light on the core values and principles that define the VinFuture Prize. Please join me in welcoming Professor Friend as your chair for the webinar.
Hello, and thank you all for joining our webinar. We depend for the success of this very important venture entirely on the work done by our nominators, and we really appreciate that you've joined the webinar this morning in the UK, at other times elsewhere in the world. What I want to do is to run through some slides which have now appeared on the screen and to say a bit about the prizes. The key feature about the prizes is that they are prizes that recognize not just the significance of fundamental advances in science and engineering, but also their real impact in improving lives, improving sustainability around the world. And it is that connection and that significance of discovery and new technology to improve livelihoods that is so distinct with these prizes. We do have the Grand Prize at a very, very high value. It is $3 million US. And this Grand Prize really must meet the criterion that the fundamental advance has been deployed and made a big difference to global well-being across all economies around the world. But in addition, there are 3 special prizes, each valued at $500,000 US, which celebrate 3 categories: innovators from developing countries, where we're looking for developments, breakthroughs that have happened in the developing world and have made impact there directly. The second is for female innovators. I should say that the way that we have evolved the interpretation of our criteria has been to look for innovations and innovators which are, if you like, on the cusp of making a very big impact. We certainly require clear evidence that the innovation that we will reward and recognize is making impact, and furthermore is set to make a lot more impact. But we are looking to catch these innovations as they are happening for this prize. And that's also true for the third of the special prizes, which is for innovators in what we call emerging fields. And that again is where we see change that is happening, but with an extremely high probability of making a big global impact, but catching that innovation perhaps rather earlier in its cycle than we do for the grand prizes. So that is to so there on the slide you can see a summary of the 4 prizes that we award, and it is that coupling between science, engineering, discovery, and the ability to make meaningful change in everyday lives that is the underlying foundation for the VinFuture prizes. So to the role of the nominators, and again, thank you for joining the call today. We are looking very hard to find the unexpected, to find out about innovations that perhaps the whole world has not yet learned about. So we have reached very widely around all continents to find people whose work is relevant and whose knowledge of what is going on in their own fields and in nearby fields we respect, because we really do want as many nominations, both within areas that obviously are recognized, but also have yet to be recognized, to enable the VinFuture prizes to have the largest pool of opportunities where there is that magic of fundamental advance, but pull through to meaningful change in everyday lives of people around the whole world. We have a number of criteria for who can nominate. All of you present, of course, we've approached, and we're again very grateful that you are here, and very much hope that you will nominate. With the nominations, it's really helpful if you can be inclusive about not just the individual or individuals that you particularly know, but it'd be really helpful to get a broad perspective on who else has played roles, large or smaller, within that field. It's very helpful for us to be able to get the broadest context within which we can take forward our own investigations. So turning to the 2 committees we have the Prize Council, of which I'm chair. The names are up on the screen. They're also on our website. My colleagues are enormously distinguished within their own fields. Inevitably, our coverage is not complete. Please don't see the remit of the prize as confined by the interests of the Prize Council members. We work very hard to stretch way beyond just what we are expert in. But here is the Prize Council, and we are very strongly supported by the Pre-screening Committee, which is the following slide. The Pre-screening Committee, who give us the horsepower to be able to look really carefully at every single nomination. We really do make the maximum use of the information we get from you, the nominators. So we've heard a little bit about previous prize winners. We've had now awards for 2021 and 2022. Our winners we're big. I hope you can see from where we have awarded prizes in those 2 years that you can get you can see an emerging pattern of what it is that we want to be able to recognize with the VinFuture prizes. What has happened for the first 2 years with the Grand Prize is that we have coupled different elements that collectively have supported a very, very large advance in human activity and well-being. In the case of 2022, it is the collective efforts of the protocols for the internet, for the World Wide Web, and the core technology that allows information to be sent around the world in optical fibers that we recognized. Back in 2021, if we can go to slide for 2021 award winners. It was the two elements that brought together the mRNA vaccines that made such a difference to our recovery from the coronavirus pandemic. Both the mRNA itself, but also the lipid coating that is needed to put around the mRNA to deliver an active vaccine that can be correctly inserted to do its job and keep us well. But it's that in both cases, what we had been recognizing was that there's a big innovation which has had different independent components. And when we put them together, we capture something of the full story of what it takes to make a global change to human well-being. So let me turn to the final slide in this pack, which is our timetable. Mid-May is the close of nominations. We then have a very busy time from June through to October, while we review the information that you have provided us with, and then make our selections. And then we have the prize ceremony just before Christmas in Hanoi in December. So I will.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Friend, for joining with us and giving us such an enlightening presentation. I'm sure that a lot of us in the audience will find this presentation just as insightful and as informative as we did. Well, as you may know, the VinFuture Prize awards a grand prize of $3 million with 3 special prizes, each valued at $500,000 each. But how do we assess these nominations? How do we evaluate these nominations? We believe that our co-chair for the webinar today, Professor Alta Schutte, a member of the VinFuture Prize Pre-screening Committee, is probably best suited to answer these sort of questions. Let us now turn to Professor Schutte for further discussion. Hello, Professor. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you. Lovely to be here today.
Well, Professor, what have you been up to these past couple of months?
Well, it's been an exciting time after the award ceremony of last year, and actually it's quite exciting to be on the cusp of reviewing several excellent nominations again for this year. So I think everyone in research circles are looking for those innovations and breakthroughs that we would like to give recognition to through the VinFuture Award.
Well, we're always excited to have you as a part of the pre-screening committee. Well, as a member of the pre-screening committee, what criteria do you use to evaluate potential nominees for the prize?
I think it's important to, and it's been said a few times now during the previous presentations, I think the key component that sets the prize apart from other awards is typically that it's about impact. meaningful change. We often have in the pre-screening committee the challenge of having nominations of Nobel Prize winners, whereas their fundamental discoveries have not necessarily have reached millions of people to benefit them. So I think what sets this prize apart is really that, especially for the Grand Prize, whether this discovery has already impacted people, not only in one country even, but across the whole world. So the examples that we've seen before for the mRNA vaccine, as you all know, impacted almost all the countries in the world, as well as for the World Wide Web, the award that went for 2022. That's something that reached basically every household these days. So it's this impact also for the special prizes, the impact and meaningful change that they have the potential to make in the next 10 years. That's really different from other awards.
Well, from your point of view, what impact do you hope that the VinFuture Prize will have on the global scientific community and, of course, to the society more broadly?
Well, I think it's about bringing science, the best science together, first in terms of the nominations, and making sure that we recognize, as Professor Friend have also said, we want nominators to really bring to our attention some breakthroughs in science that hasn't really been recognized before. Of course, some of our award winners have also got previous recognition, but that we really want to make sure that we recognize those ones that have the potential to also go beyond the current situation and bring forth further change, especially for those in the emerging fields or for female innovators or from developing countries. So it's all about that recognition, but also as part of the award ceremony and during these all these different events that's arranged by the VinFuture Foundation is to make sure that there's the science dialogue and to also build capacity, collaboration between people across the world, bringing them together. It's quite an exciting event in that respect.
Professor, how does the VinFuture Prize aim to support and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in scientific research and innovation?
I think these components are already built into the types of awards that has been established. For example, the special prizes for female innovators, although a female innovator can be in any country in the world, any age group, so it is quite broad, but we specifically want to recognize females because of often in the past, we know there's not necessarily been equal recognition. The same goes for the Developing World Award, where we want to make sure that they are very important. We've seen through our nominations also, there are very important discoveries made for the local context, often in developing countries itself. It doesn't necessarily reach always high-income countries because there's different contexts. And we want to make sure that the recognition really goes to those people working in developing countries, although they may work across networks around the world, but the work is really impactful in those countries and developed within. So by establishing specific awards, we want to make sure that there's real diversity and equity in terms of recognition.
Well, Professor, that is it for right now sharing, but we will definitely meet again at the Q&A segment where will you definitely be addressing more questions from the audience. Thank you so much for joining us. Your answers have provided absolutely valuable information to the audience as well. The VinFuture Prize is dedicated to the mission of science for humanity, and we strive to recognize excellent individuals who have made significant contributions to the society. It is with great honor that I present to you our special guest for today, our laureate of the 2022 VinFuture Grand Prize, Dr. Emmanuel Desurvire.
First of all, I'd like to thank the organizing committee and Professor Sarah Richard Friend and the Professor Alta Schutte for the invitation, the opportunity to share a few thoughts according to the items that we have that have been proposed. First, the personal impact of the prize. Indeed, obviously, it's a great feeling of honor and reward to be shared also with my co-laureates, including all the prizes of the VinFuture. Personal project, very briefly, I will have to leave my company. That will be my turn to leave the place to a younger person in the company, even if we are 80,000 or so. But I will continue my current job, which is consulting in technology for different companies, but don't tell anyone. During the event, what a great thing, a great happening is that we had together with the laureates stimulating discussion on Think Future and the key enablers of successful research. And everyone had to choose to select a keyword, and I watched it again, and I picked up curiosity, which was my keyword, intensity, persistency, and risk-taking. And all that, having no idea that what you're doing could have a great impact, possibly at a certain scale. Of course, everything researchers do is important in their life, in their laboratory, their academy or industry, and sometimes it goes beyond, and it's hardly predictable, but it can happen. And I will conclude from that question by one observation. The lesson of talking about the Grand Prize is that internet is not only a software protocol and a web page addressing, which is the key to its function, but also it's physical. Internet is physical. Information is physical. It has to go through light pulses, to be amplified, to be generated, to be detected, to be transmitted. And that is physics. And that is entropy, that is energy. And maybe few people know that internet consumes 15% of the world total energy. And that number is doubling every 4 years. And that energy is equivalent to 100 nuclear plants. So we'll need 200 nuclear plants in 4 years, so to speak, if the Moore's law of the internet applies. So the lesson is that new physics and new usages of internet are required. Maybe less bandwidth or less waste in the use of internet, better use of it. And that's a lesson that I think I learned and very many people learned from it. Second thing, I'm going to go faster. The uniqueness of the VinFuture Prize, to add a grain of salt, is that if there are many prizes that address different topics, different profiles of winners, of people, it's about global benefit and not especially about technology or its a successful application. It's the benefit. I am just doing nothing but repeating what was said before. The second objective, which is the less perceived, is it serves as a role model for young people to attract young people in science, in careers in science, and entice also young scientists and engineers to have this vocation from graduate school to scholarship, to contribute to a better world. The word that they will live with tomorrow, I mean tomorrow or day after tomorrow. About competitiveness, science, to recall, is inherently competitive. because not because you have to fight against different academia or competitors that the other scientists are foes to subdue. No, it's to fight to defend your own ideas, even with competitors as allies in this defense, because of the inertia of expertise of ingrained concepts of the past, that things work a certain way and things will never work. There are things that we have heard about so many times, and that will never work because it violates some principle, etc. So I had lots of exchanges with my co-laureates, and they have heard that practically every time something is very successful, the same that said it will never work will say, "I told you it was meant to work, of course." So it's people change their mind, and the idea is not to fight against incredulity, but to prove the point. And proving the point is the hard part of the task. It doesn't work overnight. Now, about the developed or developing countries, I wanted to stress that there is no difference. Because difference in terms of nominees, because nominees from developing countries may do their research work or discovery in developed countries, and the reverse. So is the world connected at a global scale most of the time. So that was just an observation. And it's also recognized, observed that former competitors in the same field are very often rewarded together. So that means that eventually there is a convergence. The competitiveness of science is converging to a global benefit. So there is no arguing about defending a field or not, as long as it has proven its effect. And this is the beautiful story of things that can achieve that. Last point is that there is no point, there is no purpose in trying to make a list of eligible topics because it's infinite, it's intermingled. It's virtually without number. It's innumerable. However, every scientist and non-scientist may have his or her own short list or pet list, as I could call it, seriously, or preference list. And I would like to quote seven items. And I encourage you to do your own and to put it somewhere and check it later to see if you have changed your mind or if in your pet list they are persistent things. In that, by pet list, I mean something you wish it would happen to humankind in the future and benefit to the next generation. So I would quote without arguing, and I will finish on that, bionics for the impaired, sight, hearing, mobility. 2, seawater desalination to nanotechnologies. 3, resilient, no energy, massive random access data storage. 4, integrated circuit for neuromorphic emulation and learning. That's an easy one. A killer quantum computing algorithm that could design molecular engineering for safe fertilizers and pesticides. 6, small scale megawatt class nuclear plants, weight-free, that could be used in a local city to avoid the loss of energy transportation. And 7, synthetic fuels for aeronautics and ground transportation, including sea, maritime transportation. And that will be it for my 7 pages.
Well, Doctor, Well,
Thank you.
Dr. Desurvire, thank you so much for your insights. And we are all inspired by your personal anecdotes and your personal experiences with the VinFuture Prize. Thank you once again for joining us. And we will meet again in the Q&A segment. Well, moving on, we will now move on to the next segment, where I'm delighted to introduce to you Dr. Luân Phạm, a member of our Secretariat, who will provide a brief presentation on the nomination process. This information will undoubtedly be valuable for our esteemed nominators and other interested scientists in the attendance today. Dr. Luân Phạm, I would like to welcome you to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Thao. Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to represent the secretary team at the VinFuture Foundation. The VinFuture Foundation is the non-profit organization committed to creating breakthrough in science and technology that will benefit humanity. Today, I'm here to introduce to you to our nomination portal. And I am very pleased to walk you through the most important contents and the feature of the nomination portal and the nomination form. So to begin, you can access the nomination portal at online.vinfutureprize.org/nomination, or you can also scan the QR code you see on the screen right now to open the nomination webpage. So on this webpage, you can download the instruction and the endorsement letter template. In the instructions, you will find the complete nomination form where you can draft the nomination whenever you have time. And then you can copy and paste the draft into the online portal. There are 7 contents tabs on the nomination form, and I would like to call your attention to tab number 5 and tab number 7. So on tab number 5, you are invited to give your evaluation on the nominee's invention, including its groundbreaking discovery, scientific fundamental knowledge, specific approach, uniqueness, and advancement. Then you are required to clarify if the invention can be transferred to a product and highlights its most significant social economic impacts. For example, the number of beneficiaries, people, countries, and continents. Additionally, please explain how you believe this invention has or will potentially transform the everyday life of millions of the people, if not billions of the people. Last but not least, please provide information on the history of the invention, such as when and how it started, and who else except the nominee or nominees was involved in initiating or contributing to the invention. So now about tab number 7, supporting documentation and evidence. There are several important documents that the nomination portal and form require. But again, I would like to call your attention to 3 critical items. The first one is the CV of your nominee or the CVs of your group of your nominees if you are nominating a group of the people. The second important items is the endorsement letter. 3 endorsement letters are strongly encouraged, but 1 is the mandatory. And the third one is the additional form of nominees. Please as specific as possible when providing the information. Additionally, you are strongly encouraged to include any valid intellectual properties, qualifications, patents, or other supporting documentation. Provide evidence for the information. So this tab number 7, if you have any questions or you face any technical issue, please email us at secretariat@vinfutureprize.org. We will be more than happy to assist you in your nomination process. Thank you very much. Thao, over to you.
Well, Dr. Luân, thank you so much for your insights. Now it is time for the highly anticipated segment, the Q&A segment. Please do not hesitate to send in your questions via the Zoom chat box, or for even a more interactive experience, you can definitely use the raise your hands function in the Zoom function, and we'll be happy to unmute you, giving you a chance to speak directly to our panelists. while giving you some time to think of your questions and maybe send in some questions in the chat box, we will be answering some of the previously sent questions prior to today's webinar. The first question would be addressed to Professor Friend. Could you please advise me on what to do if a nominee qualifies for multiple categories? Should I choose the highest one, make a note, or take a different course of action? Thank you.
That's a really good question, and I'm not sure that our instructions are very clear on that. My advice is that you nominate once, because of course we ask you to nominate just once for each of the prizes. We do have the opportunity to consider nominations against different prize categories. So my advice is, don't worry, nominate where you think most suitable, and we will pick that up and we will look at that nomination as positively as we possibly can.
Thank you, Professor Friend. The next question is actually addressed to our member of the pre-screening committee, Professor Alta Schutte. Can you share any insights into the selection process for the VinFuture Prize, from identifying nominees to shortlisting candidates and eventually selecting out the winners?
Thank you. Yes, it's indeed quite a process to get to the final awardees. So I think it's once all the different nominations has been received by the Secretariat Office, there's a broad screening on eligibility, reviewing of the nominations by the Secretariat, and then handing all of the remaining nominations, which is the largest bulk of them, over to the pre-screening committee. So the pre-screening committee consists of several members with different areas of expertise, and each of us then have a select number of nominations that we review based on our areas of expertise. And so we review them quite broadly, and so each application is reviewed by, or nomination is reviewed by several of the pre-screening committee members. Usually the chairs review all of them, and then we have each a specific area, for example, medicine or engineering, where we would do these reviews. And then we come together across several meetings for several months to discuss our own views and scoring across the whole pre-screening committee, to enable us to compare our different scorings and to reach those with the highest scores, to become the shortlist, which we would then hand over to the Prize Council to review further. And we often have meetings between the Prize Council and pre-screening committee in terms of the discussions on how we selected those, when there are any uncertainties. So it is quite a comprehensive process, but I can assure you it's done with rigidity and robustness. So that is quite a long-term process.
Well, thank you, Professor Schutte. I'm sure that your insight has already cleared out a lot of questions amongst the audience today. Well, the next question is for our special guest, our 2022 VinFuture Grand Prize Laureate, Dr. Emmanuel Desurvire. How has research evolved since you win the prize?
Research doesn't evolve in 4 months or 5 months. It's more like the question of years, but one thing must have evolved in the mind of the people who have got to know the existence of the 2023 prize, is the convergence between physics and the internet, convergence that is not sudden, that is as old as the internet, but that happened about the mid-80s. And as the data traffic went up, surpassed the voice traffic, and also the emergence of quantum information, quantum computing and quantum information manipulation. This is the thing, the subjects that are clearly the lesson learned from this prize of 2023. I have a little visitor here, but just say hello. It disappears in the blue, just as easy as that. Okay, that I have answered hopefully the question. Thank you.
Desurvire, and that is a very cute cat of yours. I believe his name is Augie. Is that right?
Audi for Odyssey, yeah, a space Odyssey,
okay.
a cat Odyssey. That's Audi.
Well, it's very nice to meet your cat as well for today's webinar. Moving on, there is a question addressed to our Managing Director, Dr. Tai Han Lei. While I'm not a famous scientist, am I still eligible to become an official nominator for the VinFuture Prize? Dr. Tai Han.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Absolutely. As you know, fame and recognition do not necessarily relate to the success in science. Many brilliant scientists have made significant contributions to their field without having widespread recognition. Similarly, being a famous scientist does not necessarily make one a better scientist. What truly matters is the impact that your work can have on the societies and the scientific community, as mentioned many times by Professor Richard Friend and Professor Alta Schutte. In the same vein, the VinFuture Prize not just for well-known or famous scientists, it's about recognizing groundbreaking research and innovation from around the world. As a nominator, you have the power to bring attention to exceptional work and elevate achievement. So whether you are scientists, educators, or simply a person who have a strong passion for innovation, don't hesitate to nominate someone whose work inspires you. The impact of their work could be far-reaching. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Tai Han. The next question is actually addressed to a member of our Secretariat, Dr. Lun Fa. Can I update my previously submitted nominations for this year, 2023? And if so, how can I best resubmit it?
Yes, you can of course update your nominations. By update your nomination each year, you are not only ensuring that the nominee is being evaluated as accurately as possible, but you are also showing your continued support for the endorsers. So go ahead and update your nomination with the listed accomplishments and achievements of the nominee, and please help us honor and celebrate the journey towards the greatness. You can update your nomination by logging into our portal, going to my nominations tab and clicking the edit button. You can edit the contents inside the form and insert your change supporting documents. Thank you so much.
Well, the next question is addressed to a member of our pre-screening committee. Does the nominee need to present about his research or technology at some point of time during the selection process, Professor Schutte?
No, actually, we review these documents that we receive, the nomination. We review that, we research that further and discuss it, but there's no requirement for the nominees to present their work prior to the award being made. So obviously when the award was made, there would be potential to discuss the work, but not before the award is made. I just wanted to reiterate something that wasn't perhaps highlighted enough before, and that is during the nomination process, I think it's really important for nominators to make sure that the nomination is as detailed as possible, and also the requirements for nomination are carefully read, those documents, because we've seen before as part of the pre-screening committee some nominations with very little information, especially when it is for a famous scientist and say, this is Professor this and this who have developed that. And we don't have all the details, of course, so that requires us then to go and look for the resources elsewhere, which really isn't to the benefit of the nominee. So please pay special attention to make sure that all the requirements are indicated and included in the nomination letter.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Schutte. Actually, we received a a question that should be sent directly from the audience from Professor Alta Schutte, who wanted to ask and send these questions directly to our panelists today. Professor Schutte, are you in the audience right now? Please proceed with the questions to our panelists.
Well, it is more than a question. It's really a comment, and a comment that adds to what Dr. Desurvire, do I pronounce the name correctly? I'm not sure. First of all, I would like to thank you, the VinFuture people, for organizing this meeting. It's very useful indeed for us who have an intention of nominating somebody. Having said this, thanks. Now, our last year's laureate has really pointed out something very, very important. That is about the rate of change of science and technology. It is changing so fast that we are really difficult to follow, right? He used the word convergence. I used the word convergence of different disciplines and the erosion of boundaries between disciplines. But now I think the word confluence is a better word, confluence of different disciplines. Now, for non-English speaking people, the difference between confluence and convergence may not be very obvious. Convergence is just different disciplines converging together, but you still feel, you know, that discipline. In other words, the entities that are converging. Whereas with the confluence, it's a process of melting, right? Anyway, thank you very much indeed. This is my point. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Professor Friend, would you like to address some of the comments just made by Professor Schutte?
Well, these are very good points. This question of whether the disciplines are correctly categorized comes up in many, many different ways. Of course, what we're looking for is impact and how that traces back to some fundamental advance. And it may be, you know, well-recognized single discipline, or more often it is not well described by the traditional disciplines. That's if you like, is a measure of the vitality of research and innovation, that it keeps needing to be redefined.
Well, thank you, Professor Friend. Just one last question before we wrap up today's webinar. This question is addressed to Dr. Emmanuel Desurvire. What role do you see the prize playing in promoting and advancing your field?
This is a very good question. I have partially answered that, hopefully, by saying that the prize has a role to entice young people, the humankind of the young humankind of today, and the other mature contributing humankind of tomorrow, to get involved in science, not only for the career or just the curiosity, the interest, or the job, but to have in mind to help the humankind. So this is the nominees, the nominees and the foundation, and the process is actually helping science directly in that respect, and fundamentally beyond the mere recognition of individuals. That's my belief.
Well, thank you, Professor Desurvire. There's actually one more question sent in, but before that, I just wanted to keep you in mind once again about the fact that this webinar will be made available on the YouTube platform, and that you will be able to see it afterwards. Okay, one more question sent in directly from a member in the attendance today is Professor Rabab Ward. Professor Ward, are you in the audience with us?
All right, my question is about, you insist on patents in the application, but much good work have not been patented, but have been published in journals and respected respectable journals, and patenting costs money. So insisting on patenting is not really the right thing to do. That's my question. It has to be the impact of the work, whether it was patented or just published.
Well, for this question, I would like to invite Professor Alta Schutte to address this.
Yes, thank you. That's a very good point. And I think there was previous reference to the patents, but a patent is not required as part of the nomination, and it's also not essential. But if there was a patent registered, it's important to let us know so that it's part of a complete nomination. But you're very right. It's not an essential part of the nomination process.
Question 5 is about just patent. Or was, out of the 7 questions. So it should be your research or something like that.
Yes, it's often part of a discovery or a fundamental science, and sometimes it's not possible to patent some of those aspects. So your understanding is correct.
Can I comment also that I think nothing is essential. I think we had put patents in to make it clear that we're not just looking for science publications. We are looking for innovations that might have happened outside the usual academic world, and patents tend to catch a broader and different set of innovations. But nothing is essential. All we're looking for is evidence of where something very exciting has happened.
So you will change question 5 to patent or any other good work published or impactful work. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you so much to Professor Ward for delivering your questions. And of course, thank you to our member of the panelists for addressing them. The next questions actually coming from another member of the audience today, Professor Paolo Cherubini, who's here with us, who's joining us from the audience today. Are you here, Professor Cherubini?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for giving me the word. I have a question which is related probably to the previous one. I'm an ecologist. I work with 3 rigs, and in our field, we reconstruct past climate, we reconstruct stream flow, and we provide also very useful information to forest management, but also to water management, which is very important also in countries which are fighting for water resources, like in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, but also in Vietnam and in the Southeast and so on. So my question is, do we, well, not me, myself, of course, but some of the scientists working in our community, do they have any chance? Because they publish the work, but their information is not directly, immediately applied.
Professor Alta Schutte, could you please help us with this question again?
There's always these challenging situations, and perhaps I could just mention, as we mentioned the example of the winners, the grand prize winners of last year, it's often not a single individual that has done a specific piece of work that gets recognized. And in your case, it may be the same, that a specific piece of work was done, and then another individual or group have helped to bring that into the next step and to be applied to actually help with, for example, water preservation. So it's often a string of individuals or pieces of work that is required to make sure that the innovation has reached its full potential and impact. And we often therefore consider, so we may receive a nomination for one of these individuals, and that is why Professor Friend have mentioned earlier, if you can also advise on other individuals' innovations or work that's strongly related to that piece of work, that would obviously then be receiving the recognition altogether. So it's not necessary if you have done the discovery work on the one side and have not been directly involved with the impact that it is not eligible for a nomination. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hope that answers
Thank
your
you.
question.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
There's actually one more question sent in from Sashi Bushan. And Sashi Bushan, are you in the audience with us right now?
What I think that is it really interesting to prioritize some area like sustainable development goal or something like that to boost up the audience or participant or nominate to particular area?
Can you hear me?
I believe that was Professor LaRusso. Professor LaRusso, would you mind just waiting us for a few seconds as we addressed the questions from Mr. Bushan first, and then we will come back to you right later. Is that okay with you? Well, Professor Friend, could you please help address the question sent in by Mr. Bushan?
Yes, it's a really good question. And obviously it's a question that we have talked about internally at some length. We don't want to prejudge what is important. If we do that, we're not making best use of this huge effort we make to reach out to you, the nominators. We want to be surprised, and that means that we have to keep our mouths shut occasionally. Of course, what you say is really important, and of course, the VinFuture prizes are there to connect to the big issues that face humanity, and of course, we're looking, but we would love to be surprised, and we are for that reason. I will say nothing about areas I particularly like.
Well, thank you so much. We would like to extend our sincerest gratitude to Professor Richard Henry Friend, Professor Alta Schutte, and of course, our special guest, Dr. Emmanuel Desurvire, for joining with us and for your enlightening presentation. And of course, thank you to our representatives from the VinFuture Prize, Managing Director, Dr. Lê Thái Hà, Dr. Luân Phạm as well for your insights. Thank you to our outstanding audience for joining with us. And as a final reminder, we urge you to submit your valuable nominations before the deadline of 2 p.m. on May 15, 2023. And this is according to Vietnam time, by visiting the website link provided in the chat box. Well, your participation is greatly appreciated, and we hope that you're leaving today's webinar feeling inspired to nominate deserving scientists who are working towards a better future for all. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.